Bonjour, buenos dias, salamut pagi, good morning. Good morning in French, Spanish. Did anyone recognize the third language? That was Indonesian. I suspect that even those who don't know me would easily identify me as a native English speaker. I love to travel and explore other cultures. Those good mornings are representative of some of my travels. But sadly, learning languages and mastering their accents is not one of my strengths. Or I should say, consciously learning languages is not one of my strengths. I, like most of us, learned the language I was born into without conscious effort. Immersion, the only real necessity, mastering a terrifyingly complex structure of symbols and meanings, a system with a finite set of elements, yet able to construct an infinite set of ideas. Can any part of the human experience exceed the magic of childhood language acquisition? Unfortunately, this superpower doesn't last a lifetime. At around 12 years of age, the ability fades, no doubt as the brain needs to make room for all the other changes coming at that time. I took French in high school, 3 years, ninth through 11th grades, the last 2 years with Madame Sardella, a native French speaker and an excellent teacher. But my aptitude did not match my enthusiasm. I was a middling student, impressing Madame more with my knowledge of European geography and culture than my congregation of verbs. A few years later, during my youthful backpack travels, I went to France. I remember arriving in Paris by train and heading down to the subway. I bought metro tickets from a machine, a pack of 10. As I stepped back with my little paper tickets, I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counted in French, startling myself. While studying, I never reached a level where I was really thinking in French. But there in Paris, surrounded, of course, by signs in French, by people speaking French, some foreign language center of my brain had taken over. But still, I am a native English speaker. I will always be. How could it be otherwise? I grew up in an English-speaking culture. That is my inheritance, my legacy, and it will always be so. Even if I were to study again full-time and move to Paris or Provence and speak only French, I could then say I am primarily a French speaker, but I would never say I am not a native English speaker. Alas, I will always be a native English speaker. To claim otherwise could never make sense. A couple of years ago, Ibram X. Kendi, the race scholar and author, came to our area to speak. You may have heard me talk of Dr. Kendi, as his work has had a strong influence on me. He spoke over RPI. Our ministers attended, as did some other members of the congregation. Dr. Kendi started out talking about all the divisions in society today: political, racial, economic. It seems there is nothing we can all agree on, except one thing. It seems that if you ask nearly any American this one question, they will all give the same answer. Asked if they are racist, they will say no. The only thing we can all agree on is that each of us is not racist. That was kind of a startling statement, especially in light of our country's racist past and current inequities. Surely someone is racist. Since that lecture, I always have my not racist radar up. And Kendi is right. Almost everyone will claim to be not racist. Even segregationists, even self-identifying white supremacists will say they are not racist. I saw an interview with a minister of a whites-only church. I think it was on 60 Minutes. No, we're not racist. We just don't believe the Lord wants the races to mix. That is what he said. And can we forget Donald Trump's pronouncement? I am the least racist person you will ever meet. Denial is the heartbeat of racism, Kendi tells us in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. It is beating within us, he continues. Many of us who strongly call out Trump's racist ideas will strongly deny our own. How often do we become reflexively defensive when someone calls something we have done or said racist? Kendi goes on to articulate how racist is no longer a descriptive word, but rather a pejorative word. It has become the equivalent of saying, I don't like you. Today, for so many people, a racist is someone who doesn't like Black people. So yes, it's easy to say, I am not racist. I look at myself and I think, I don't hate Black people. But then the next thought or words might be something like, it's just that they are always fill in the blank. Looking for handouts, dangerous. The Lord didn't mean for them to mix with white folk. Now, I, for one, have said and certainly thought, at least to myself, I am not a racist. Have any of you said or thought that? I struggle to get my head around the point Kendi was trying to make. You mean I can't say that I am not racist? But I don't believe those things. I try to. I'm not like Donald Trump. I am getting defensive, aren't I? I had fallen into that familiar trap of either or thinking rather than both and thinking. Kendi sees a complex, interconnected world filled with real people and history and culture. Racism, sexism, transphobia, anti-Semitism, these isms are woven into the interconnected world, systems of exploitation and oppression. Being racist is not about hating Black people. Kendi offers a much more meaningful definition. Being racist is supporting a racist policy through our actions or inaction, or expressing a racist idea. Being anti-racist is supporting an anti-racist policy through our actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. Let me repeat that. Being racist is supporting a policy through our actions or inaction or expressing a racist idea. Being anti-racist is supporting an anti-racist policy through our actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. A person can be anti-racist one moment and racist the next, both and thinking. A person can be anti-racist 90% of the time and racist the other 10%. A person can think most Black people are fine, but that some are fill in the blank. And certainly we see racism expressed most openly and often by those the culture favors, but no one is immune. Internalized racism, Kendi tells us, is the real Black on Black crime. But really, I can no longer say I'm not racist? Really? The problem with being not racist, Kendi tells us, is that it is a claim that signifies neutrality. I am not racist, but neither am I aggressively against racism. But there is no neutrality in the racism struggle. The opposite of racist isn't not racist, he tells us. It is anti-racist. There is no neutrality. Our complex, interconnected world surrounds us with racist ideas and racist policies. Muslim bans and wall building, school curriculum censorship, mass incarceration, voter suppression, on and on and on. At times it seems the lies are infinite. We will likely be attuned to some of these messages, but we will miss others. So much of what we learn subconsciously. But unlike the immersive learning of language in childhood, there is no off switch in our brains. Our susceptibility never disappears. We must remain vigilant. The default settings in our culture are still often racist ones. To be not racist is akin to checking that little software box, accept the default settings. When we claim to be not racist, when we think that way, I am not racist, we risk relaxing our guard against those messages. And we risk silencing the reminders that we are called to do more. Okay, so not racist doesn't cut it. I must strive to be anti-racist. As I took this admonition to heart, I began searching for other cultural claims of not it. What about sexist? How many times have I heard things like, I am certainly not a sexist, but I'm not really a feminist? But can the opposite of sexist be not sexist? I see a pretty darn patriarchal world out there, and in many places it seems to be getting much worse and fast. Excuse me. Certainly, our default settings for women, for LGBTQ folks, for indigenous peoples, for marginalized peoples, those settings are not ones of equality and respect and freedom. Will we check that box, accept default settings, or will we strive to be something different? Will we strive to be something different, something better? I am not racist. Yes, I have said it many times. I said it from this pulpit in the past. Not in so few words, but I made the claim, my understanding clouded by defensiveness and my overwrought objectivity and my bravado self-confidence. A claim to be outside of, above my culture, the social world I have inherited and must live within. It was a claim of superhuman powers, idolatry, in a way, the idolatry of individualism, the claiming of divine powers for myself, a claim that made no more sense than had I said, I am not a native English speaker. Race and racism, these terms so distorted by the oppressors and by our own at times lazy use, can be a difficult entry point to understanding ourselves in relation to the interdependent web. So let me explore another example that may be a bit less contentious. Vegetarianism. I think most of us would agree that our cultural default settings for diet include eating meat and other animal products. In our society, you need to make an extra effort to avoid eating animal products. If you make that effort, we say you are a vegetarian or a vegan. These descriptive terms acknowledge that active effort is required to choose the non-default settings. Effort is required, but it is possible to be vegan or vegetarian. You'll likely need to search a little more to find a restaurant with good options, but nowadays the waiters will usually know if a dish contains meat, or menu items will be marked with a little V. And packaged food labels have gotten better and better, although some ingredients take some decoding. But imagine now that menus had no little V's and that the waiter didn't know which dishes had meat. Imagine that packaged foods had no ingredients list. Imagine if some menus were intentionally mislabeled or that your waiter, either from ignorance or indoctrination, misled you. Imagine if the package labels intentionally omitted animal product ingredients. It suddenly becomes harder to be a vegetarian. In such a world, I might say, I aspire to be a vegetarian. And imagine now that companies start to make foods that they trumpet as being meat-free, claiming that is the very purpose and essence of the product, yet they cynically use animal products as a way to increase profits. Imagine that towns and regions ban vegetarian restaurants and vegetarian entrees. Now we would need to become personally vigilant in the face of unreliable waiters and deceptive labels, and we would need to protest corporate malfeasance and discriminatory restrictions. You see the challenge. In food, a material substance can be touched and tasted and lab tested. Racist lies, deeply embedded and ever morphing, are so much harder to detect and purge. To not be or to be. This framing opens us to a truth of the human condition. There are some claims that we can never make, some states of grace or purity that mere mortals bound to the web around them can't obtain in their lifetimes. We are humbled, and this humility is needed if we are to fully respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And might this acknowledgement of our limitations as individuals help us, as Reverend Gilmore says, to fully embrace something greater than ourselves, to help us develop that social understanding of ourselves that we and our culture so desperately need. I strive to be anti-racist. I work to be more of a feminist. I aspire to be an ally. These statements celebrate our work, acknowledge our frailty, petition for support, inspire others, and reconfirm the power of the interconnected web. Let us resist the temptation to either or thinking. In criticism or confrontation, it is easy to cast the absolutist stone. He is sexist, she is racist. But to do so provides our adversary with the false cover provided by either or thinking. Rare is the person whose acts and pronouncements are always racist, or always sexist, or always homophobic. Their defenders will respond to the unsparing charge by pointing to this or that exception. Rather, let us reclaim the language. Let us insist that racist and sexist and other isms are descriptive, not pejorative. It is better for us to embrace the complexity of a both-and world and to practice its language. Let us respond, that was a racist remark. It says people are the problem instead of the policies that ensnare them. Let us say that policy is racist. It will harm people, and those harmed will be disproportionately Black people. Or that court ruling is sexist. It will restrict women's freedom. Our faith calls us to this work, to repairing the web so that someday our children or grandchildren will not need to make the I am not claims. In a society where there is no racism, we will not be tempted to claim, I am not a racist. Indeed, it wouldn't even make sense. It is not easy, all of this. Some days it wears me out, and with my privilege, I can only bow before the resilience of so many others. Many times it is my faith that keeps me going, my faith that we can make a better world, and my faith, my church, all of you. I come here for the intellectual reminders from the pulpit and maybe some constructive guidance from my ministers and peers. But just as important is simply being in community, in this community, the surrounding emotional support, explicit and unstated, the signs of goodness and pain, the example of others striving. Here, without thinking, I can count my blessings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.